Welcome to the Lindamood-Bell Leaders in Literacy webinar series. My name's Dave Kivita, and I'm the Director of Development for Lindamood-Bell for Schools. And today we're going to be talking specifically about summer learning and how several districts that have partnered with Lindamood-Bell across the country have used summer learning to really grow not only student performance, but also build teacher expertise. And I'm excited to have 4 districts with us today that have used different models of Lindamood-Bell and have them here to share what their experiences have been in utilizing programs and how that's differed maybe from what has happened with summer learning before. And so I'm going to take a moment to have each of our folks introduce themselves, and then we'll dive into our agenda for today. And since I'm in Washington, D.C., I figured we start with the person closest by. Angie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, this is Angie Gum. I'm a special education supervisor at Fauquier County Public Schools, which is in Warrenton, Virginia.
Great. Thanks, Angie. And then a person who I've really gotten to know over the last several years, over just a ton of visits out to her district. Pam, can you introduce yourself?
I'm Pam Siebenmorgen. I'm the principal of Beard Elementary, and we're in the Fort Smith Public School District in Arkansas, Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Great. Dorit, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Dorit Battaglia, and I teach in the Central Union District in Lemoore, California, and I teach first grade, and I've been teaching first grade for about 29 years now. And I have been trained in Seeing Stars, VV, Visualizing, Verbalizing, and Cloud9.
Great. Excellent, Dorit. It's great to have a first grade classroom teacher here with us.
Thank you.
And Kevin, I know you're not too far away from Dorit. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Kevin O'Hare. I'm the special education coordinator for the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District. I was introduced to Lindamood-Bell as a teacher, where I was trained in Seeing Stars and Visualizing and Verbalizing, and was able to implement those for 4 years as a teacher, as well as during a summer program, which we'll talk about later. And then continuing the efforts to build our teachers' capacity to implement Lindamood-Bell strategies through our school district.
Great. Excellent. So here's our agenda and where we're going to go with the discussion today. We're going to start off by talking a little bit about what sensory cognitive instruction is. And I wanted to start there because historically, folks haven't necessarily seen a lot of success with summer instruction for students. In many cases, it ends up being kids are given worksheets or put onto computers and spend a lot of their time there. And sometimes the hope for the best that we can do is to not have students fall further behind. And what these districts have done is to say, well, that's not really what we want to do with our summer. What we want to do instead is to use summer to help our targeted populations of students develop the underlying sensory cognitive skills they need in order to be successful. And there are a couple of things that go into that. Obviously, the first being providing instruction in specific targeted sensory cognitive areas, and then making sure that we're providing enough instruction. And so to get there, we'll talk about how it is that these districts built their summer intervention plans. There's a lot of work that goes into it behind the scenes to get it going. We'll talk about what's different in terms of what happens both for students and for teachers when we're providing summer intervention compared to what's happening during the school year. And then we'll take a couple of minutes to look at some data at the end of what some of the impact has been for students from receiving sensory cognitive instruction in an intensive manner during the summer. And I always like to begin by just making sure that we all start from the same spot of thinking, okay, well, what is sensory cognitive instruction? And sensory cognitive instruction is about developing the specific skills of phonemic awareness, symbol imagery, and concept imagery to underlie students' ability to access content material. And I think everybody out there is pretty familiar with phonemic awareness, right? That ability to locate sounds within words. So I can identify that ah is the second sound in the word cat. And we need to have good phonemic awareness to sound out words. We also don't have to have very good symbol imagery, that being the ability to map the sounds and the letters within words. so that I can identify that A is that second letter in the word cat, and that cat is spelled C-A-T and not K-A-T. And if I sound it out in one paragraph, I can recognize it quickly when I come across it again in the next paragraph. And then there's concept imagery. And concept imagery is the ability to really create a movie in your mind for language as it's coming in, whether a student is decoding a paragraph or having a paragraph read to them. Either way, they've got to be able to create that movie in their mind so that they can remember. And if we're thinking again about that word cat, so that they're actually picturing a furry animal with pointy ears and a long tail, and they're not just saying the word. So those are the three sensory cognitive functions that we really look to address at Lindamood-Bell. And we know that those are integrated, right? That students have got to, as they develop their word attack skills and their phonological processing, be able to also tie that over to their orthographic processing. So as I mentioned earlier, they can sound out a word, and at a certain point, they can also begin to recognize that word quickly. And then they've also got to bring in vocabulary in order to help them be able to read those words effectively. And then we can't forget the most important part, of course, which is comprehension, the overall point of reading. And the two primary programs that we'll talk about today are Seeing Stars and Visualizing and Verbalizing. And Seeing Stars addresses the auditory and visual circles, and Visualizing and Verbalizing addresses language and comprehension. And we do often think, that's one of the first ways to determine differences between students and what we want to be addressing based on where students are in their learning, and where it is that they may be struggling, is to define, is this a student with weak decoding issues or weak comprehension issues? And what do I expect to be happening at different points in their learning? And Pam, I think as we were getting ready for this, you were sharing something about what one of your fifth grade teachers was saying.
Yes, we have these data meetings, and today we were sharing, and I was asking them questions about their common formative assessment, and we give what's called iStation, and we are able to look at how the students did or didn't do. And the rating scores in both my fifth grade classes were just really, really good. And the teacher made the comment to me. She said, my main focus right now is math. She said that is really where they are struggling and they need the help. That reading really they're doing great. And I said, what do you think the reason is for that? And all of my teachers in my building have been trained Lindamood-Bell. And she made the comment, she said, it's Lindamood-Bell. She said, she's been teaching quite a while. And she said, the last several years, she said, my students are coming to me with the foundation they need for me to actually teach on my grade level. And she said, before I was having to teach those decoding skills and different things that you would hope that kids would learn in the lower grades. And she said, now I can focus on the comprehension at my grade level, and they're able to understand, and I'm moving them. And that's why my scores are like they are. And so she was given all credit to Lindamood-Bell. And one other thing that I'll share, Dave, that I didn't share earlier with you, but in looking at this chart, another thing that Lindamood-Bell does really well for us, we sometimes for students, we label them incorrectly. So we're labeling so many kids dyslexic when they're really not. And so what Lindamood-Bell does so well, it finds the gaps that these kiddos have and allows a teacher for the first time the tools they need to fill in those gaps so that those kids can move on. And then those kids that are truly dyslexic, it allows us then to give them the needed support that they need in those 45-minute groups or whatever. So it really helps us to move the kids the directions that they need to go to support and help them.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for sharing that, Pam. And as Pam was talking about, those students at those earlier grade levels have really developed good symbol imagery, that ability to, as we were discussing before, map sounds and letters within words. And if students are still struggling with symbol imagery and phonemic awareness, you can see some of the sort of list of symptoms that they'll often have in there, such as sounding out words but not recognizing them, difficulty reading fluently in context, slow and laborious decoding skills that they may have. And so if you think about that population of students and then sort of switch gears and say, okay, well, maybe my students decode just fine, but they still aren't doing very well when they have to answer questions about a given passage. And that's underlined by what's called good concept imagery, that ability to create an image gestalt or whole for language as it's coming in, as I talked about earlier, kind of creating a movie in your mind as you're sitting down and reading a book. And And so students with the weakness in concept imagery may have many of the symptoms that are outlined here, such as ability to follow directions, easily summarize text and think critically about it, maintain attention and focus on material or if they're not understanding it, and just overall weakness in language comprehension, whether it's written or oral. And Angie, I think as we were talking before, you had kind of an example that you were thinking about of a student who is struggling with weak concept imagery.
Yes, I had a 5th grade student who had a medical diagnosis of an auditory processing disorder. And so the parents had been interested in the Lindamood-Bell program. That we felt like at that point his decoding had been sufficient, and we were going to begin with the visualize and verbalizing component of the program. So he was doing a one-to-one with a teacher, and we were not making progress. He just not seemed to understand the imagery piece. So we kind of halted things. We knew this summer reading program was coming. So when we started him over the summer, he was with a teacher and 3 other students. And immediately, I guess with having the support of peers and seeing what they were doing, he immediately started to take off. And by the end of the summer was doing much better with the decoding and the comprehension. So it felt like that peer interaction in that small group really supported what he needed. And maybe he needed a model, but it was very good for him.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, Angie. I think the dynamism of visualizing and verbalizing when it is a group of students is really powerful because they do learn from each other in a way that's very different than just receiving one-on-one instruction. And Kevin, I know that you guys have had, in addition to the visualizing and verbalizing program, you have some students who you use the Talkies program with. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about what the Talkies program is and who your target audience for that is.
Yeah, we use that program in our moderate to severe classes they go K through adult transition. So we use it with a broad age group of students, but students in our moderate to severe program that have difficulty, especially with expressing language orally and have limited communication or maybe emerging, verbally. It provides a lot of language with a lot of different methods for response within the program that our teachers do a really great job of generalizing across settings and across subjects and not just in, discrete Talkies instruction. But students tapping yes or no in response to specific questions, students mimicking the movement of something in a story with an object, students providing thumbs up, thumbs down, just giving students more opportunities to answer without, necessitating a verbal response.
And these are, this is just a quick outline of a little bit about each of the school districts. And Kevin, I don't know if you want to outline a little bit about Monterey Peninsula and how you all are structured.
Yeah, I can. We use all the variety of programs across a variety of our programs, right? So we have, it's used primarily in tier 3. So in RSP classrooms, our resource support providers, we have from elementary through high school. We also have special day class settings, a general special day class, which again runs the gamut from TK to 12. And then we have a program specifically for students on the autism spectrum. We have our moderate to severe program that was previously mentioned, and then our program for students with emotional disturbance. So in all these programs, based on student-specific needs and based on learning outcomes and goals, we have different programs embedded as a primary literacy intervention.
Great. And Dorit, maybe you can tell us a little bit about Central Union School District and where you are and what the population of students there is.
Okay, we have two schools located on the Lemoore Naval Air Station. We have Acres and Neutra out there. And then we have a school out that is called Central Union. And it is, I don't know, the exact percentage is the Tachi Indian tribe. And then we have Stratford. And we're mainly Hispanic. And we have, unfortunately, a lot of our teachers who have been trained in the Lindamood-Bell programs have moved on to different jobs. But currently we have both first grade teachers are trained in seeing stars and visualizing and verbalizing. And then we have a reading interventionist who is also trained in seeing stars and visualizing and verbalizing. And one of our third grade teachers participated in what we called a boot camp, where a person from Lindamood-Bell spent 3.5 hours a day for 15 days with her and another coworker. And it was intense. And I learned a lot talking to that particular teacher implementing last year's summer school program. And so it's mainly focused at Stratford, and our principal is on board. And so that helps a lot. And in the next couple months, I'll have a third grade teacher trained and our current kindergarten teacher. Previously, our kindergarten teacher was trained, and that really helped me out in first grade, because when I came in, they were up there, they were ready to write. And so their eyes, went right to where they were supposed to be looking, and everything was there. But she's excited. They're both excited to be trained, one in VV in third grade and then seeing stars in kindergarten. So we're going to have another complete package next year. So our kids are going to be very fortunate to receive that training. And so we started off with almost all of my class was participating. And so now we have some groups that are just flourishing. It's just amazing. So
that's great.
Putting it on the page. That's what we're getting to.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Excellent. Pam, as we were talking about before, we first started partnering together in 2016-17. And you all are using it, as you were describing it before, across your entire school.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. So K through 2 classrooms, as well as in special education and in reading intervention groups. And Angie, I know in Fauquier County, it's a little bit of a different model right now. Maybe you can talk about how you all are utilizing the programs.
Yes, so we pushed it out over the summer with a big intervention program. But as the school year began, the expectation was all 10 of our elementary schools would be using the program for a 40-minute block of time each and every day. So I had to get administrators on board with that. Most of the teachers had already been trained over the summer, had students. And so we have been pushing it out since the beginning of the school year in 40-minute sessions 5 times a week. That's where we are at this point.
That's great. And I appreciate you mentioning the sort of the time there, because that is one of those big differences when we do get into thinking about how summer intervention might be a little bit different in terms of a model than what happens during the school year. So maybe to begin, we could talk a little bit about how each of you were engaged in selecting the student population and how you kind of targeted those. Pam, do you want to go first?
Sure. Like I said earlier, we do monthly data meetings. So we are paying attention the entire year of our students that are progressing and the students that are either making little to no gain or just kind of struggling and not making it. So those are the kids then when we start preparing for summer school that we're looking at, that we want to use. We're paying attention to we do iStation. We're paying attention to their iStation. We're paying attention to their grades, their CFAs, and we're looking at basically everything academically that they're doing. And so then we reach out to those parents and have conversations about what summer school can offer for them. And we have extreme buy-in. We've been doing it now for several years that basically we're getting phone calls from parents requesting their child go into summer school. And unfortunately, sometimes we have to tell them no because their child really doesn't meet the criteria of needing it anymore. And so we go through a very specific process in which we do look at the kids that we feel can move and benefit from the summer program.
Great. Thanks, Pam. And Angie, how did you begin to select students?
So I'm out of the central office, and so my office is the special education office. So our target was it would be a tier 3 intervention at an elementary level for special education students only, since it was coming from our office. So I had to move around into all of the schools, talk to the administrators, talk to teachers, and we used just special education teachers or reading specialists to do the summer program. So I first had to get buy-in from the administration and from the teachers before I could set a number. And so with us just coming out of a terrible year due to COVID and not much instruction, we were pushing this for students who were struggling. So once I knew how many teachers I had, I took a total of 75 students. That was going to be my target. We had 2 4-week interventions, and I was targeting students who were rising 2nd through 6th grade. And so we used a battery of assessments per recommendation of the Lindamood-Bell staff. We did those assessments with the students, And then we began demographically and ability-wise grouping these students to make sure that we were in groups of 5 or less. And we pushed it out in 3 different elementary schools with teachers from across the division with it. So that's how we began our process.
So Angie brought up a great point. Angie's focused on special education students because of her position at the central office. Pam, maybe you could talk about what the makeup of your student population at Beard is when you're doing summer intervention.
We take them from all areas. I mean, they can be a SPED student, but they're also our general education students as well. So we don't just look at special education students. We look at all of them. And so since we are trained building wide, my special education population during the school year is also receiving Lindamood-Bell, as are the general education kids. So we look at everybody when we're also planning for summer school as well.
Great. And Angie, you were talking about teacher buy-in. I think that was a really important point, obviously, this past summer. I mean, how'd you get teachers to buy into spending their summer doing this after such a grueling year?
Again, coming off COVID and the pandemic and the hybrid levels of instruction we had, teachers were worried about their students as well. So not only out of our office were we looking at a summer program, but our division was looking at a summer program for general education students. So I just jumped on board with them and I mirrored everything they were doing. So I mirrored the time of day, the number of days per week, the transportation, the food abilities to these students, and teacher pay. So once I jumped on board and could mirror what they had, then I could go to my special education teachers and offer them these pieces, the pay being the big piece. But because of what the funding was coming from, it was a significant amount that we could offer them. And then once they got into it, they were so excited to be doing it. Most of them were like, "Oh, do you need me for the second session too?" So it was great. And once they were trained, they really bought completely in and saw the progress of their students. So it was well received.
That's great. Pam, did you have anything that you were thinking about when you were trying to figure out how you could convince your teachers to give up some of their summer to do this?
Well, we are a pretty good sized district, so we're fortunate in that aspect. There was only 5 sites that held a summer school, myself being one of them. And so we were able to pull from everybody in the district that would be interested in teaching summer school. And so, really, there wasn't that big of an issue to get the teachers to do it. First off, because we do use Lindamood-Bell throughout the entire district. So the teachers are trained and they do also throughout the district see the benefits of Lindamood-Bell. And so our teachers actually have to apply for it. They do get paid well for doing it. And it is, they can either choose to do both summer sessions or just one. Typically, they just do one. We also did On Cloud 9, which is the Lindamood-Bell math program. And so what we did at my school is we had one summer session of Seeing Stars in VV, and then the other summer session of On Cloud 9. And the teachers were different. And so it allowed us to then actually give more teachers in the district an opportunity because the money is good. And so because they believe in it and stuff, it's not that difficult for us either, but we're pulling from a lot of teachers throughout the district doing it.
Great. And I know sometimes folks have a hard time envisioning that students are going to want to do this and come with a positive attitude to do what they might envision as just more schoolwork all day. And I think, Pam, I know you guys in Fort Smith do a lot around incentivizing it for students as well. Can you fill us in a little bit on some details there?
Yes, we do. We offer, we use ESSA money, and we provide some pretty big incentives for these students to come. First off, let's go back to, we create the list of students that we feel would benefit from this. We then reach out to the parents. We don't talk to the students yet. We make sure that the parents are on board. And then if the parent is on board, we ask the parent if we can pull the child in because we can get them excited. And so there's every day there's an incentive for them to be there. We have a theme around every summer school. So then around that theme, we provide incentives. So every single day a child is here, they get some type of prize or whatever for actually just being here. And then the big incentive at the end of the week, then they get it just a little bit bigger. for being here. If they're here every single day for the summer session, they get a Kindle Fire that is theirs to take home. And the kids are pumped and excited about it. And so, I've never had a student tell me no. If the parents are on board and I tell the student, your parent's going to support this, after we tell them everything that can happen, they're excited. But also my kids buy into Lindamood-Bell here. I mean, their confidence is built up. They know that they're now learning to be able to read where they've always struggled before. And so that's a big incentive too, when we tell them this is what you're going to continue on through the summer. It's not something new. And it's like you said earlier, it's not worksheets. It's not drill and kill skills that they don't know. It's filling in gaps and helping them to become better learners. And, kids are on board about that too. They're excited to learn. And so the incentives are huge. Also, our district does a great job. I didn't mention this earlier. Transportation is provided for these kids. Breakfast and lunch is provided. Snacks are provided. So we make our summer school a very fun atmosphere. It's back in the day, it used to be almost a penalty to have to go to summer school. It's because you didn't do well, you have to go to summer school. That's not the way it is right now. And kids are excited. And like I said, it's a big theme. It's a big fun time that they're here. And it's for half a day. And so that helps too. It's not an all day program for them, but we really don't have problems with kids wanting to come. I've never had one tell me no, and I've been doing it for several years now.
That's great, Pam. That's great. Angie, what did you guys do to kind of build student interest and desire to do this and to stick with it?
We formatted a little bit based on what Pam was saying. We did not mention to the students until we had talked to the parents, had some buy-in from the parents. And then we did have a little bit of trouble. This was our brand new year. We had some parents who had already promised their kiddos some type of sports camp or something like that. So we had some students who did not attend the full 4-week session. We said, we'll deal with that. We'll work around it, whatever we need to do. But just the motivation of the teachers and the students actually seeing that they were able to learn was a very good incentive. I have a speech pathologist whose student was in the program. He was struggling and he didn't want to go to school. He was a rising second grader. And by the time he finished with his 4-week session in the summer, she said he was going to his room, getting a book and wanting to read with her in the evenings. So that was a motivation for him, just knowing that he could do it. And I think that was true for most of the students.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. I know I've seen it for my own son. The drive that he gets from the confidence that grows, that he knows that he can do this now. And so he wants to do more. He can do what his peers can do and when he couldn't before. And that really motivates him to keep after it. So Kevin, were you looking at specifically data, or were you looking more at, labels for students? Maybe you could talk some about that.
Yeah, there was a combination. We definitely looked at diagnostic data. We had one towards the end of quarter 4, so we had recent data to go off of, and we could see students who either weren't meeting their learning targets or were still at a place where, factoring in summer regression, we would be really concerned about next year. Teachers and administrators and those at the school sites too were also reached out to just to provide specific recommendations for students who would be a good fit for this program, who maybe we had done a virtual program. So that was another consideration. Students who maybe had concerns about attending an in-person program over the summer that also fit this profile. It was a good option for them to have that available. So that was also another factor going in. Do you want me to go through and talk about all the slides, or do you want me to stop there?
How about we come back to you?
Each prompt, okay.
Yeah, sure. And Dorit, how did you all go about selecting the students that you wanted for whether it was boot camp or summer intensive instruction?
The STAR reading scores, and then it went to teacher recommendation. What we did was we took our class, we ranked them, and the intents in first grade, we targeted about 5 kids, and then we I ended up with 3, and the other teacher had 5 in the actual Seeing Stars program that she utilized in the classroom. And so I think it weighed heavily on teacher input, because we were, as they say, in the trenches. And the AR star is not, to me personally, is not a very good diagnostic for first grade. It's it's a little bit challenging for them. And so you don't get much data from it. And so we had to go through with teacher input. And basically what she and I did was letter recognition, sound recognition. I mean, remember, we're dealing with kids who really didn't have a kindergarten, year. And so we had enough students right there to build our population for summer school for first grade. And then same thing with second and third grade.
Great. And so once you kind of had gone through and thought about who the students were, how did you go through kind of getting parents to be interested in saying, yep, I want to have my kid go?
It was a one-on-one phone call from not only the teacher, but the principal called them.
Wow.
And she got the buy-in, and, we had some little bit, like, no, I don't think so. And then we got on the line and we were like, your child really needs this. This is the best thing. I talked about the program and said, what an impact it would have. And the small class sizes, I don't think we had any summer school classes bigger than maybe 15. And so and we had an aide in the classroom as well. And so it was like, we're getting them. We're going to reach your child. And this is an opportunity that your child probably will, not get in the future. So let's go for it. And our parents are supportive in general, and they were very supportive of summer school.
Great. Kevin, did you have a similar experience?
Yeah, pretty similar. I think I would have, in hindsight, started the process a little bit earlier and planned to this year. I think it can take a lot of time, and identifying students and then the outreach component can be lengthy, and then the deadline comes up quick. So anyone who's considering this, I would advocate getting an early start.
Mm-hmm.
We use Parent Square as just a messaging system to parents district-wide. So for everyone who was identified, we sent that information out through Parent Square just to give an overview of what the program was and to gauge interest. And then we used Google Forms for people to be able to respond if they were interested, if they had follow-up questions, or if it was something that they just wouldn't be available for, as we were reaching out to a large number of people. And then once we had that information, similar to Dorit, individual phone calls with interpreters or translators if necessary, and trying to leverage the relationships again of administrators or preferred teachers, letting them know they would be part of the program going into the summer.
Great. And I guess, in terms of then how about teacher buy-in too? Because I know that could be a tough one. I know there were a lot of folks from districts across the country who were just feeling like it was going to be too much to ask their teachers to do more work over the course of the summer. What was that like for you, Kevin?
Sure. Okay. This was a lot of teachers reached out wanting to do this. So similarly, I gauged interest with just a Google form, what the program would look like, kind of what the parameters would be, and who would be interested. I think one thing that helped was we were offering it online. So if someone was traveling or if someone was, not able to be at a specific site every day, they were still eligible to participate in the program that way over the course of the summer. I think another real appeal was just the amount of professional development. I know we'll touch on that more later, but it's an amount that we certainly can't capture during the school year. So people who are interested in developing that skill, knowing that was a component of the program, to help generate interest to participate. And then I think lastly, that it was so different than what they do on a day-to-day basis, that it's not the same level of lesson planning and trying to fit, these processes or whatever else they're teaching into the entire other scope and sequence of instruction, that they would be really focusing on a specific skill, that they'd be working with different students, each section or each period of the day, and would have a chance to use multiple programs. We had both Seeing Stars and VV Group. So I think the diversity within the program, but the smaller scope than what they were doing during the school year, I think appealed to a lot of teachers in terms of wanting to do extra work over the summer, but also, do something really meaningful over the summer as well.
Yeah. Dorit, and anything that stood out to you in terms of building that buy-in?
Well, we were able to, in first grade and second grade, the focus was just reading and just maybe a 15, 20 minute math session. So that was intense. So you were able to spend the whole day on reading. It was phenomenal. We were able to do a lot of hands-on manipulation of letters, little books that the kids were able to read, manipulate, and take home that day and be able to read at home. The teachers that participated at my school were very, very excited. They believe in the program. It sells itself once you get into it. And I think they were relieved. And mind you, I'm working with, during the summer, it was with seasoned teachers. We weren't talking first or second year teachers. We have them with 10, 15 years under their belt. And they were like, I want the coaching. I want to be enriched. And so it was not a hard sell. So it was really, really easy for me to get my teachers to buy into it because they believe in the program. They've seen it work in their classroom. They've seen it work. A couple of them have been in the upper grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, and they've seen it work there. So they knew, that it was going to work for the kids, and the data proves it out. So.
That's great. That's great. And Kevin, I know, when we were getting ready for this, we were talking about that sort of online aspect of it. And I know that for the most part, most summer intervention is in person. But maybe you could talk a little bit about how you guys did online instruction, how you kept the students engaged, and, what did that look like?
Yeah, we tried to set it up to be really simple. So just made a basic Google site where students would be assigned to a group, and then that group would have four. We use like Bitmojis of each of their teachers at the bottom, and that's like each group you would click on that Bitmoji, it would take you to a room, much like the one we find ourselves in now, where your teacher would be waiting for you. I think a lot of things that helped with engagement. The games that are built in, we had some game boards that our coach shared with us. So using those, especially if there wasn't going to be any visual imagery, if you're not using, syllable cards or something like that, when you get to air writing, there's still something for the eye to rest on, something to keep students engaged and to make it more fun, especially if there's bonus stars available or whatever type of, PBIS system that you're using. I think that was an important component too, just to have frequent enough reinforcement that when students are air writing virtually or students are, meeting the demands of the program, that's consistently being recognized, especially when you're rotating through different staff, right? Keeping the consistency with how that's reinforced was a major part of it. And then I think the timelines, when you have a 50 to 55 minute session and that much to get through, especially when students understand kind of the scope of the lesson, because it is delivered really consistently, right? And once they get a sense of that, I think it's easier for them to know where they are in the pacing of the lesson, what's going to be asked next. So I think that's something that the first day everyone's really tired, right? You haven't kind of built up that capacity to go through that. And then as the weeks go on, I had teachers less interested in me covering for a period for them, or students needing less breaks or anything like that, because there was really, a sense of where you are in each of these lessons and what's next and what can be earned, and students really motivated to earn, incentives that are based on that. And I think getting that information early. So when you're doing your introduction sheet or your fact finding, or you're having people sign up, leaving a space for students or their parents to list, like, what are the students' interests, right? How do you pick like high interest articles that, you can still draw from your curriculum, but what are going to be high interest articles that they're going to be interested in reading, and what are they going to be interested in earning? And if you can get that information beforehand, it helps you build out lessons and pick games and things like that are going to keep students' interests high throughout the course of the program, which it is a lot of hours when you put it all together. So you're going to need a lot of material. And the more of that you have beforehand, you don't lose a week trying to get to know students or to find that out, especially if they're shy or reluctant to share something like that about themselves early on before they've developed those relationships.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I think, talking about the a lot of hours piece, and, when we think about how these programs can be used, Pam was talking about how her entire school uses the programs from tier 1 through tier 3. And Angie was talking about how in her district, they're using it in tier 3. And really what the goal, of course, of doing tier 3 intervention is to try to get students a lot of instruction over the shortest period of time possible so that we can begin to close gaps very quickly. And if we know that most kids are going to need, if they're a standard deviation or more below the norm, they're going to need 80 to 120 hours of intervention. Well, if we can get them 60 or so of those hours over the summer, we've really made a big impact on what's going to happen for them during the school year. And for some of those kids, that might very well be all that they needed, right? Because it certainly is a bell curve. So there are some of those kids who they get summer intervention and they're ready to go by fall. I think the other piece that a lot of times is missed in summer learning is that it is an incredible opportunity for teacher growth and teachers to develop their own expertise. Because, even for teachers who are providing tier 3 intervention in a school day, all school year long, they often have many other roles they have to fulfill. And so they're only getting to practice a given step or given program for a certain amount of time. And it often takes them the whole school year to see the scope and sequence. And what we were able to provide for both Fauquier County and for Fort Smith was intensive job-embedded professional development. So actual coaching as teachers were leading their small groups. And the coaches were diving into those small groups over Zoom and helping model steps and co-teach with teachers there. And so Pam, I'm sure you've seen a lot of growth with your teachers from obviously the years that you've been doing this and your staff has been doing this, but also from summer. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what some of the difference has been for your teachers.
Those that teach summer school actually have even a deeper understanding. And so when they've taught summer school, they actually come back and work with their grade level teachers to teach them things that they learned during the summer. They get 45 minutes of PD a day. You said job embedded. I mean, there's nothing like it. And, you also mentioned that in a school year, it takes a long time for them to see the entire scope and sequence. Whenever these teachers are teaching summer school, in a day's time, they're basically teaching what a teacher could do in a week during a regular school year. So they're getting it much deeper than what they can in the classroom. They go further than what they can in the classroom. And when they have questions, then at the end of that day, there's a Lindamood-Bell coach that's going to support and help them, and they can ask questions. And if they have any concerns or this didn't work or what did I do, those Lindamood-Bell coaches, and I don't think we brought that up, Lindamood-Bell doesn't leave us during the summer. I mean, they're constantly coaching us throughout the school year, but they're with us every single day during the summer as well. And if we come across a tough student that we're not moving, they're right there with us and they're Zooming with us and giving us information and feedback. So that PD is so powerful. I had a fifth grade teacher that was self-contained, that only taught science and social studies his whole time with me. This past year, we decided that we were going self-contained for that grade level. It was the only grade level that wasn't self-contained. So for the first time ever, he was going to have to teach literacy. He came to me wanting to teach summer school because he knew everybody else knew Lindamood-Bell. And even though he was a fifth grade teacher, he wanted to know what they knew. So he taught summer school, not just for the money. He taught it because he wanted to understand what those other teachers understood. And he came out so much better and just, able to then do a better job with reading that he had never taught before. So I was very proud of him for wanting to do that. And he did a really good job. But Lindamood-Bell was right there supporting him, knowing he'd never done it before, but yet he was able to pull off a very successful summer school program for those students because of the coaching that was there from Lindamood-Bell as well.
That's great. Thanks, Pam. And Angie, I know that you intentionally kind of structured the PD so that teachers could have summer school right following their workshops and have that as their entry point to using the programs before they went into the school year. So maybe you could talk a little bit about your thinking in doing that.
Yes, I knew my teachers absolutely were going to need support with this. We had all these students with great needs, had teachers that were kind of new coming into the program, and they couldn't have asked for a better collaboration with Lindamood-Bell over the summer. They felt completely supported with the coaching and then the PD afterwards, and they thought that was going to go away when the school year began, and they were super excited and could tell my new teachers who had not taught over the summer, you're not going to believe how much support you're going to get. They're going to be coaching with you. They're going to be helping you. And then we have professional development afterwards. And so it was a wonderful buy-in. Our teachers are very excited to have all of that.
And Kevin, I think you were talking a little bit about having the Lindamood-Bell coaches available so that the teachers are, completing the workshops, but then when they sit down and they actually get a chance to implement the program, they've got someone there who can model an entire lesson for them and then be there to co-teach with them and be there to be a support as that teacher starts to drive the instruction, and they just jump in with feedback about a particular step or a particular student. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what the coaching process looked like for you all.
Yeah, it really looks like kind of a gradual release of responsibility throughout the summer with more modeling or co-teaching initially, right? Especially with certain steps of the program that someone might not have a lot of confidence in if they didn't spend as much time using a syllable board, or if they're working with a different age level or different group than they taught during the school year. So opening with more of that modeling and with more of the practice around, reminders to use the sensory image language, and the initial coaching sessions in the afternoon, the initial PLC is really focusing on, those specific practices, but then the scope broadening as the program continues, and having it be more providing feedback, observing and providing feedback, after the fact, as opposed to just in time, and letting the lesson continue when necessary. And then the PLCs in the afternoon shifting, or after our sessions were over, the daily PLC, which is, how often do you get to live in a world with daily PLC? It feels great to be able to do that, shifting more to like developing lesson planning and reviewing data and using that to inform lesson planning. So teachers really leaving with a lot more tools than they came in with, and a good system and good structures for how to implement it during the school year. But because they're able to focus on just that. But it is a very gradual release of having a lot more support in the actual, implementation and instruction early, and then fading more to like the larger picture and understanding of what kind of probes to do when, and when to, pivot lessons and things of that nature.
Great. And yeah, Dorit, I think you were talking earlier about how, sometimes it takes students a long time during the school year to acquire certain things that we want them to be able to learn. And often the advantage of summer instruction is that both the students, but also the teachers, are able to see the full scope and sequence of a program. So they begin to learn where it is that they're going to go to, and what changes they should expect to see in that condensed period, rather than waiting for a whole school year for that effect to take hold. Is that something that you saw as well?
Well, I received about 3 hours of between 2 and 3 hours of coaching, and I took one day. And so I was able to go on for about a half an hour with coaching, get off for a little bit, digest it, and then come back on. And it was phenomenal. The kids loved the coaching sessions. We were able to get out of our seats. I took a large dice and put the numbers there and put word chains. And they were up there at the whiteboard, just chaining away. And so we still use the workbook, but used it in a different modality, I guess. I don't know what the word is. So all these ideas start coming out of your head that you're like, oh, I can do this, or I can do that. I can work it a different way. So the coaching, you were able to see almost like from start to finish, like you said, of a week's worth of lessons in a couple of days. And so the kids just flourished. It was, they were excited. So the coaching, it's nice to hear from somebody else instead of your teacher all the time. And the coaches are enthusiastic, and they are patient. They're a lot more patient than I was sometimes towards the end of the day. And so the other first grade class and the second and third received about, I think it was half an hour to an hour a day of coaching. And so they were able to see the complete picture as well.
I did bring up some data from, this is from Fort Smith, from their very first year when they did summer school. They had 8 groups at one site. As Pam was talking about, the teachers received job-embedded professional development as they were providing instruction, and the students were getting 3 hours daily that first year, 5 days a week. And when we took a look at what the students' performance looked like, they got about 60 hours of instruction over the course of those 4 weeks. In light blue, you can see what their pre-test scores look like, and in dark blue, you can see what their post-test scores look like there on the left, across several different measures of publicly available nationally normed assessments. And so there in the light blue, you can see these are students who are coming in and had, relatively good vocabulary scores at the 21st percentile, comprehension scores at the 27th percentile, yet their reading fluency was all the way down at the 2nd percentile. and their reading accuracy was at the 4th percentile. And so again, these students got that intensive multiple hours per day instruction. And over the course of just 1 month, we're able to make statistically significant gains in all of those areas. And when we took a look at not just the percentile gain, but the standard score changes, what was happening what was really happening for them, you can see they made very large standard score changes across all of those measures, in particular in those areas of decoding, which has its payoff, of course, in terms of comprehension. And so that's for students who are receiving Seeing Stars instruction. When we flip and kind of look at students who are receiving visualizing and verbalizing instruction, so those kids who had good decoding skills, but a weakness in terms of their reading comprehension, we can see sort of the opposite challenge, right? These are students who are coming in much lower in terms of their comprehension, and with about 60 hours of instruction, jumped all the way up to the 32nd percentile. And these are kids who had pretty good decoding scores already. So it wasn't about trying to improve their decoding in order to make their comprehension change. It was a very isolated challenge for them. And yet they were still able to make really tremendous gains over a short period of time. And longitudinally, when we think about it, it's great to say, hey, here's what happened for these kids during the summer. But what does it mean big picture? What does it mean for them long term? And so we were able to look at actual end of year ACT performance for a group of students who received summer intensive instruction in Fort Smith. And these are students you can see on the left there. We took 29 kids, grade levels 3rd through 7th, who received summer instruction. And you can see that in 2017, all 29 of them were at or below the 25th percentile on the ACT. By the time they were retested in 2019, that had dropped down to 13 of them. And in need of improvement, all 29 of them were in need of improvement at the end of 2017. And by the end of 2019, that had dropped as well. And it's important to, understand that ACT is a very high stakes assessment, right? So we're not talking about the parts of reading. We're talking about putting all of those pieces together in order for students to be proficient. So it was exciting to see those. And I'm happy that our team has been willing to partner and join with us in this webinar today. And they've been willing to share their contact information. And Angie, I wanted to throw it out to you if you've got any closing thoughts or ideas or things you'll be thinking about as you go into this summer.
Well, we are just about they're about to submit their mid-year testing to me. I'm excited to see from April of last year until now. And then we will be pushing out the same summer program that we did last year, hopefully the same number of students, and continue to make great gains.
Nice. Great. Pam, any closing thoughts?
Same thing. We will probably around March start looking at our list and determine about who will go to summer school, and we'll do another one, and we'll have a different theme, and the kids will be excited, and parents will be excited. And so I can't, encourage people enough. If you're on the fence, reach out to one of us, because you can see lots of gains for these students. And so the coaching is unbelievable. That can help you and your teachers as well, not just your students.
I did take the first grade. We gave the word attack, the rat word reading, and the rat spelling. And I do have that, like the growth that the kids made.
Great.
And for the word attack, they made 3 months growth. And for the rat word reading, 5 months growth. And for the rat spelling, they made 6 months growth, mind you, in 15 days.
Wow.
So, and that is, we had some kids who struggled still. They made some improvement, and then some just leaps and bounds. And mind you, these were kids who were ranked by their teacher as the bottom of their class. And their star scores reflected that as well. So that was quite eye-opening to me when I reviewed the stats side by side. So that was something
great.
So
that's great. It's got to really help build that teacher buy-in and see that kind of growth happen.
Yeah, and something to go with the student buy-in is you had the extrinsic, like you can buy them trinkets or whatever, or a prize box. I had a prize box, but by the end, it was intrinsic. It went with 6-year-olds, 6 to 7-year-olds. It was intrinsic. They were doing it because they wanted to become better at reading or better at decoding. And so it was like, yeah, the prize is, it's okay, but I'm a reader, and I always do what are we building? We're building our reading muscles. And so that's what, you start off with. And I believe Kevin alluded to a schedule. Once they got into a schedule, like what to expect, this is what we're going to do now. Oh, now we're going to go and roll the dice and build the word chains. Then we're going to do a little bit of reading of our little books. And so they crave that schedule. They need a schedule as well as the teachers. And so that was something that was kind of eye-opening, because in the regular classroom with so many kids in the classroom, you don't have that focus. And when you bring the numbers down and you bring, like you said, the content, you're just learning how to decode, not social studies, science, math, everything else thrown in. I'm able to focus and I'm able to do it well. I'm able to succeed. I wanted them to go home at the end of the day with something that they did, something that they accomplished, because, you only have 15 days. So you better make it count. So it was a fantastic experience.
Great. Thank you all for joining us today for Lindamood-Bell Leaders in Literacy webinar on summer instruction. Stay tuned. We have webinars on a regular basis, and you can always access the recordings of those webinars off of our website at lindamoodbell.com.